Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. You're very welcome to the final plenary of the day. I'm John Cox, University Librarian at NUI Galway. It's great to see you in here rather than out taking the sun. And that reminds me of a very important point. Our sponsors are very keen that you would all visit them regularly as opposed to the temptation of the sun. So there are 3 times you can do that tomorrow, 11 o'clock, there'll be lunchtime, and there's 3 o'clock. So it is actually very important because the sponsors, of course, are helping us to finance the conference. So please do go and visit them. They would appreciate that. I suppose we have 2 presentations, and we are going to do the very same as the last plenary, where we'll have the 2 papers in succession. About 25 minutes each is allowed, and keep to time. We'll keep the questions till the end. And the first presentation, we'll go straight into it, is the Academic Librarian collaborating with an academic department to design and deliver a master's programme at Maynooth University. And to tell us that story from Maynooth are Hugh Murphy and Barbara McCormack. And I think it's Hugh first. Am I right? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John, and welcome to the graveyard shift. Laura, before I got up, asked would I do her a favour, or do her a solid, as the young people say, and pratfall off the stage. So it's a wonderful thing to be a known quantity in your profession. But thankfully, so far, so good. What myself and Barbara are going to talk about is, as John mentioned, this idea of the academic librarian. And just a little caveat, we do an awful lot of teaching and learning, subject librarians, liaison librarians. We're talking about something slightly different. We're talking about something that has kind of been born out of a different type of collaboration, I suppose, in many ways to the same ends, but also rests on, in the main, a different group of staff in the library. And in many ways our collections, which is what both Barbara and I are involved in. So, just a very brief outline. I'm going to speak for a couple of slides, and Barbara's going to come in and talk about the actual nuts and bolts of the course that we're involved in. We're going to look at the rationale, we're going to look at the development of it, give an overview and some examples, and then at the end I'm going to come back in and just talk about some of the benefits, and because we have to be honest and candid about these things, some of the challenges. And indeed some of the lessons learned. And then finally, because the course is a Master's in Archives, it's been recently accredited by the ARA, we're going to give some testimony to that, which hopefully will provide objective vindication for the route we've taken. So, really, where did this start? It's a natural fit, we think. It's the history department, it's our library, which also includes our archives and our archivists. There's a lot of cognate links between these 3 areas. And this is one of the reasons that we've been so keen to be involved in it, and one of the reasons that hopefully it's worked so well. But I suppose, again, as a caveat, it's a different level of engagement than we traditionally do. Or maybe it's more appropriate to say it's a different type of engagement than we traditionally do. And it's very apparent from the outset, and Barbara will talk about the genesis of the course, but that a different level of involvement would be needed and would be asked of the library. Not just to sort of dip our toes in, but to really, really get involved in this. I want to just give you a little bit of the strategic rationale. Our strategic plan is not an ivory plate that it looks like there. That's the power of images, but it gives a lot of focus to teaching and learning. There's a whole section, 1 out of 6 in our strategic plan gives a focus to teaching and learning, and that's obviously very broad. And what we're doing, both in special collections, but obviously in other areas that I mentioned, is engaging in teaching and learning in different types. And the reason the MA in Historical Archives works so well with us and with colleagues in special collections, predominantly but not exclusively, is that a lot of what they do is already working. So identifying and evaluating primary sources, helping people understand the nature of primary sources, archives, incunabula, and so on. Another section in our strategic plan gives a very strong focus to staff development, developing our staff in terms of teaching, research, and public speaking. And we've done this a long time. We're very proud of our track record in Maynooth, but this again is another example. There are times in the middle of the course when the staff may not thank us for doing this. I'm one of them. But you can't deny that at the end of it, you've been taken out of your comfort zone and you're doing an awful lot of new things and you've learnt a lot of new skills. Very critically, and with an institutional hat on, it does enhance the credibility of our institution, and recognises the expertise of our staff in maybe a different and less traditional way than heretofore. And then finally, and one of the key themes of what we're talking about today and yesterday, is there's a very natural and strong and obvious focus on collaboration. There are several units in the university, not just ourselves in the Department of History, involved in this Masters. And there's a very strong and obvious sense of collaboration between them. So just to take you into the nuts and bolts of it, I'm going to pass on to my colleague Barbara.
So thank you very much, Hugh. I'm delighted to say that neither one of us tripped over or fell off the stage in that the exchange there. So what I'm going to talk to you about today really is the background and development of the MA in Historical Archives, but also looking at the course content in greater detail. So in terms of the establishment of the course, it was developed in 2008, and this was due to the Department of History at Maynooth University, who wanted to develop a postgraduate course in archival and records management. And they thankfully thought that the library would be the logical partner in this regard. So the course started as a 2-year part-time offering, but by 2011 it turned into a 1-year full-time offering, and it now runs on an annual basis. The first graduates finished the course in 2010, and myself and Hugh started teaching on the course in about 2012. So in terms of staff commitment for this particular initiative, it involves up to about 10 staff members in the library. And as Hugh alluded to, these are not just special collections staff members. So these are people right from the very top, the university librarian, the deputy librarian, members of the senior library team, right down to assistant librarians, senior library assistants, conservators and archivists. They're all involved in some way in this particular programme. And Hugh mentioned earlier about the accreditation, which is a great success for the programme, and again, it's one of the great benefits to the collaboration. We can see how fruitful the collaboration has been, in that the course was recently accredited, given provisional accreditation by the Archives and Records Association for the course in professional archives and records management. Okay, so what exactly does the course entail? Well, this is a level 9 postgraduate full-time master's course, and it runs over a full calendar year. So it runs over 2 semesters, but it also includes summer modules as well. And it involves teaching input from a number of, departments on campus, the main ones at the moment being the library and the Department of History, but it also involves input from An Foras Fasa, which is the Digital Humanities Institute at Maynooth University. And the aims of the course are to equip students with the knowledge, principles and the skills really to underpin their careers as professional archivists. It also aims to inform students of the necessary care and development of archives, to generate an awareness and understanding of archival management solutions, and then finally to communicate the historical processes involved in record creation and the key repositories in which records are held. This is just to give some context to the current archive students in terms of the history of different institutions and their different archives that they hold. Okay, so how do we meet these particular objectives? Well, the objectives are met by a number of modules, and these 4 modules are examples of courses that are run solely by staff in the library. And I'm going to talk about 2 of these. The bottom 2, leadership and project management, and book collections in archives, a little bit later on in more detail. But for now, I want to mention preservation management, which is a course delivered by a professional conservator who is one of our staff members in special collections and archives. And this is a 5-credit course. And it aims to teach archivists about the benefits of good preservation practice, about the difficulties involved in sustaining a suitable environment, environmental controls, for example, for archival collections, and also to look at things like writing a preservation policy and planning for disasters. So disaster planning is a key part of that course. Another course then that's taught solely by library staff is Managing an Archives Collection, which is taught by two of our professional archivists, again in special collections and archives. And this course relates to everything from buildings in which archives are held to policies that you can create in terms of access to archives and collection development. So it's just to kind of to give you an overview into the courses that are solely taught and designed by library staff members. But that's not to say we don't have involvement from other staff members into other aspects of the course. So, for example, that could be a library staff member giving a guest lecture, for example, on a digital humanities theory and practice class or course. It could also be an information literacy session delivered by our history subject librarian, Pauline Murray, which would be delivered to the students enrolled on the MA in Historical Archives. We also have staff involved in field trips. So we organise field trips as part of the course to places like the National Print Museum and to Dublin City Public Library and Archive. So again, that's a different way that we're involved in the programme. And then where we can, where it's feasible, we try to organise project-based work placements in the library to give students some practical hands-on experience working with historical collections. So when we talk about the academic librarian and we talk about teaching in terms of our role, what does this actually mean? Well, for us, in terms of our experience on the MA in Historical Archives, we are involved in every stage of the process. So whether that's deciding on the title of your course, to the course descriptor, designing your lecture notes and your lesson plans, right through to planning assignments and then dreaded kind of having to mark the assignments after they're submitted as well. So all aspects of course delivery, we're involved in all aspects of that. And now just to concentrate on a couple of examples, a couple of case studies, specifically what we're involved in. Yes, that is me, if you can't make it out, with one of our medieval manuscripts. There are students as well, but they didn't make it into the picture. So this particular module is a 5-credit module, and it's a module that's delivered by myself and Hugh. It's 12 hours per week over a 6-week period, and 2 hours of that 12 hours is dedicated to a field trip. So like the field trips I mentioned to Dublin City Library or to the National Print Museum. The students are also expected to complete 12 hours of independent study, so for example reading or their own research, and 12 hours of planned learning activities. So this is their assignment-based work that they're expected to do as part of this course. And these are the course objectives for that particular module, Book Collections in Archives. So the course itself was designed to foster an understanding and appreciation really of rare books, like early printed materials, manuscript material and archives. But we also wanted students to be able to conduct a comprehensive analysis of physical characteristics, not just of archives, but also of, again, early printed books in Conul, medieval manuscripts, for example, and other formats that we have in our collections. We wanted to develop their overall navigational skills so that they could use various types of catalogues and finding aids, not just archival lists, but also online and printed book catalogues as well. The dreaded card catalogue, I think, comes to mind. And then another key objective was to facilitate the evaluation of a printed item in the collection. So these are archivists that may work in future environments where there's not just archival material, but there are also printed books as well, and it's how to manage this material in their collection. Then finally, it's to equip students with resource discovery skills, which is quite an important and key component of this particular module. And these are the 3 assignments that myself and Hugh have designed and that we give to students in our module Book Collections in Archives. The first assignment there relates to incunabula, which is early printed material. And what we do for this assignment is we actually we ask students to consult an early printed work in our collection. In this case, it's a book printed in 1489 and printed in Augsburg. And we asked the students to look at the book and to identify key features that we've discussed in class. So these are things like the bindings, the print, the typography, but also how the paper is made, if they can identify if it's handmade paper or machine-made paper, if there are any watermarks, for example. So this is all a key part of the analysing physical characteristics. And then they write up a short report based on their findings. The next assignment was, we were particularly commended by the Archives Records Association for the practical nature of this assignment, in that students are expected to visit an exhibition and they have to critically analyse different components and features of the exhibition. And we have actually asked the students to look at some exhibitions that we have been involved in the curation ourselves. So it's good to get some feedback on exhibitions as well as part of this process. Finally, then, we give the students an assignment relating to resource description. So students are asked to identify specific mark fields. It's not a very in-depth analysis, but it's enough that these future archivists can recognise specific mark fields in catalogue records. And we also ask them to discuss and to describe the impact of resource description. Okay, so another example of a course that we're involved in is Leadership and Project Management. Now, this course is delivered by Helen Fallon, the Deputy Librarian at Maynooth University Library, but it has input from across the library. For example, the University Librarian, Cathal Macaulay, gives a session on this module as well. And again, it's a 5-credit module. It runs over 12 hours, and the last 2 hours are devoted to student assessments. So students are expected to present a grant application as if they were applying to the Heritage Council or a similar body for an initiative or a specific work on a particular collection in their respective institutions. And this course aims to equip students to face the leadership and project management challenges that they might experience in the workplace. Also to provide an insight and overview into resource management and people management, and to deliver the skills necessary to manage a small archives facility. So a lot of our students would already be associated with an institution. In many cases, they're actually already managing a small archives facility, and this is just to equip them with to meet some of the challenges they might experience in their roles. Finally, then, the topics that are covered in relation to this course, you can see they're quite varied. To begin there, we have advocacy and marketing, which is becoming increasingly important, I think, not just in special collections, but in all of our library departments. So in this particular aspect of the course, we teach students how to really market themselves and to market their archives and their institution. So how to, for example, to curate an exhibition, to manage an event, then deal with media coverage, write up press releases. So again, very practical skills that they can use in their own institutions. Following on from that, then professional writing and applying for funding. So this could be either academic writing or writing for an annual report. And then again, something like a grant application, as I mentioned, to the Heritage Council or a similar body. Again, it's just practical experience that they can use in their respective roles. Another topic is financial planning, financial management, I should say, and building projects. And financial management, obviously, it relates to budgets, but it's not only budgets in terms of what you can buy in your collection, it's in terms of human resource costs, training costs, and how to factor that in terms of your archive or your institution. In terms of building projects, this module is actually taught by the University Librarian. This particular class is taught by the University Librarian, and it relates to managing either small or large-scale building projects, so either refurbishments or extensions. Finally, then, the main topic of this course is management and leadership. And management and leadership, it's not just in terms of archivists that might have a staff in their institution. It's also in relation to self-management. So skills like time management, performance appraisal, these different skills that archivists really need to have a knowledge of when they're in the workplace. So I'm going to hand back over to Hugh now, who's going to talk us through the benefits and some of the challenges that we've experienced in this collaboration with the Department of History. Thank you.
Barbara. I made the mistake of looking at Twitter as I was sitting down there, and it's very comforting to know that the gleam on my forehead can be seen by space rocket craft. Makeup next time. So I'm going to move on, if you're not blinded by this. And
does anybody have a hat?
yeah, or a mask. For me. Just to talk about some of the benefits and so on, because it's important to note that this is a course that the library invests a huge amount of time in and resources, and candidly it prevents us from doing certain other things, and you want to make sure that there's something valuable coming out of that. And luckily for us there is, but also luckily for us it's coming out in a number of ways. So just to talk briefly about the library itself, I mean, we do, as I mentioned earlier, we have new skills. Barbara went into the detail in some of the modules. You have to upskill in terms of delivering these, doing assignments, doing assessment. As we know, they're not something that we always have to do. They're definitely out of our comfort zone in a lot of occasions, and you come away with something extra. I mentioned earlier on the credibility of the institution, also the credibility of the staff. I mean, staff are standing up as practitioners, and it's, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome and so on, but it's actually really important for staff in a library or an archive to stand up and say, yes, I have an expertise in this. It's a very powerful thing to do, and it's a very empowering thing to do. You'll see in one of the quotes here, good to help and guide. I love this quote. This is by one of our colleagues when we asked them for their thoughts on this. Again, a very powerful statement. We're actually working to help students in our profession in the broadest sense of the word, and guide them in the ways that they need to go. And again, it's a very empowering thing to do, and we're contributing to the future of our profession. And I'm using profession, including libraries and archives, I should say that. And then you'll see another quote there, helpful in evaluation of our own basic procedures. Am I practicing what I preach? Critically important. We all suffer from time constraints. We all suffer from people saying, have you got this done? Can you also look at this? But actually, in so much, and certainly in archival and collections work generally, adhering to standards, even if it takes a little bit of extra time, is critical. So it helps us reassess our own practices. So in terms of the academic department, which is the Department of Modern History, they're getting a huge amount of support. I don't think they disabuse that idea. And they're getting a huge amount of bespoke knowledge. And that saves them at a very practical level. They don't have to go out and get it from somewhere else. They don't have to go out and learn it. And from our point of view, why would they? I have a couple of quotes there. One of them is quite long, but these are all from the course director and current head of the department, Dr. Jacinta Prunty. Without the library, this MA program would have not have got off the ground, and certainly would not have achieved the ARA accreditation. I think for a library, as a vindication of what we're doing, you can't get any more stark or powerful than that. Siobhan mentioned the idea of the library laboratory earlier on, and it's something that we hear a lot, especially in the Faculty of Humanities, the idea that the library is their laboratory. The students are seeing as well as hearing the collections, manuscripts and so on, the teaching materials, and their instructors are the custodians and specialists in situ. I won't even begin to read the other one because it's Ulysses, but it will be available for you to see. Lovely little, oh, hang on a second. Yeah, oh yeah, lovely owl. The students, they're getting direct support. They're getting a multifaceted suite of support from a variety of staff in the library and all their academic colleagues as well. And that leads to a broader palette of skills. Barbara mentioned earlier on, we have conservators teaching, we have archivists teaching, we have librarians teaching, we have senior management teaching, we have library assistants, senior library assistants, all involved, subject librarians. So they're getting the exact knowledge that they need at the time. So it's not somebody, speaking as someone who has occasionally lectured in things I didn't really know anything about, it's not that. It's something far more appropriate and far more powerful. And they're getting the practitioner's experience. So they're not just they're getting theory. They're learning about the theoretical things, the frameworks, the principles that they need to, but they're also getting the on-the-ground, coal-face experience. A couple of quotes from students there. The library staff in the master's course incorporate information literacy and valuable practical skills to develop a rich inquiry process and support our best professional practice. That's a better quote than I could have given, to be honest with you. And having such a broad profile of staff teaching ensured the course was always interesting and relevant. And again, if anyone's ever done this, keeping it interesting and relevant is really the sort of the holy grail. It is not without its challenges, and indeed there's a demand on time on me as well, I note from the light. This is one of our colleagues put this in, and it was, in a way, from all the different quotes we got from colleagues, this really is what it came down to. Consider what training or support will be needed by staff teaching on the project. You have to support the staff that are doing this. You can't just ask them to take it on as a gimme. It requires a degree of learning. It requires a bit of time to get into it and to feel comfortable with it. It is a logistical challenge. So, for example, some of our classes are taught in a special collections reading room. Some of our classes are taught in Russell Library. If we're doing those classes in there, it means that a researcher can't really come in. It means that the staff that normally work there might have to do something else. So the more you know in advance, the better. It is out of the comfort zone. My colleague Helen Fallon always talks about the oh hell zone and the learning zone. I don't know which one we're always in, but it's definitely not the comfort zone. And again, as anyone has done this, it's not always possible to keep the students engaged, no matter what they might have said when I asked them. Some of this stuff is, is complex stuff, and they don't have as much time as they might like or we might like. And it's normally a small class, so believe me, if their interest is waning, you can see it. And then really, at the end, it's this idea of just preparing as much as possible to make sure that the staff can do the best job they possibly can and want to do. So, lessons learned. Very quickly, we need to know what we're doing. So if you're teaching archives, you need to know you're teaching archives and you're not teaching incunabula. If you're teaching, contributing to the digital humanities aspect, you need to know you're doing that. Staff have to be supported. You need to give them on-the-ground practical examples, and you need to sort out the logistics. And then finally, we have a quote from our staff. One of our graduates actually teaches on this course now, which is wonderful, both in terms of the quality of the course, but also they know as a student what worked and didn't, and they're bringing that to it. Finally, some impartial testimony, which I won't read out entirely, but the use of library staff is to be commended. Without exception, they bring a breadth of skills and experience to the programme, which will be of great benefit to the students. That's an objective person, that's an accreditation group. They're not there to plumose us. That was their opinion, and we don't think you can really say it much better than that. So thank you for your time, and apologies for running over.
Thank you very much, Hugh and Barbara, and congratulations. It's an excellent collaboration in itself and also in presenting the paper, so thanks very much.